And I got to know a lot of people through him.
How'd you get to Butte so much? How'd that work out?
Well, I had both sets of grandparents there, you know, the Bennetts and the Murrays, and I had Tom Murray, who lived down on Platinum, and he had a daughter, Lynn Murray, and then the Taylors lived up on Caledonia, and they had a son, Tom, and then Frank Kerr, who was Bob Kerr's son, and Frank Kerr, the president of the Montana Power Company, was his grandfather. I used to go over and spend time with him. And then because of going to Moose Lake, I went to Moose Lake before I was a year old and knew a lot of the people from Butte. I don't know whether you want to go into it, but the Dr. Pemberton, who was a doctor in Butte, had a cabin there. The Yolden family had cabins up there. The Yolden family owned Davidson Grocery in Butte. Dr. Burton, who was an eye doctor in Butte, had a cabin there. The Gwinnells, Orrin Gwinnell was married to a Yolden. He had Newborough Drug in Butte. And then Edward Borchard married one of the Yoldens, and he was a very high up metallurgist, an engineer for the Anaconda Company, traveled all over the world. He had a cabin up there. And they all had children that I knew and used to spend time in Butte with, and they'd bring their Butte friends up to Moose Lake.
Well, did your mom and dad get that cabin, or was
yes.
They're the ones that got it?
Oh, no. Tom Taylor started the cabin because he was a good friend of Eddie Borchard's. Then when he moved to Salt Lake, they gave the cabin to my mother.
Oh. And how would you just drive over to Moose Lake?
Pardon?
How would you get to Moose Lake?
Oh, yeah. It's up on the Middle Fork of Rock Creek, about 25 miles from Philipsburg.
But how would you go there from Helena? You'd just get in the car and drive?
Yeah, just drive up there.
So when was the first time you remember going up there?
God, I don't know. I can't remember not going up there.
The 30s, the early 30s.
Yeah.
And so you just had your own flivver or whatever you called it back in those days.
Well, I don't know whether you're interested in all this trivia, but McDonald Pass wasn't finished until 1936 or 37. We used to go over Priest Pass in the car, and that was all dirt, of course. And we always, going to Moose Lake, had a flat tire, so we had all kinds of spares.
Did you go through Drummond?
We'd go to Drummond, and then to Philipsburg, and then from Philipsburg, you go on Montana 1, and if you stay on Montana 1, you end up at Georgetown Lake. We turned off on the Scalcahoe, and since you're from Hamilton, you're probably aware of the Scalcahoe. You go 10 miles down the Scalcahoe, and you see a sign that says Middle Fork of Rock Creek, and you go 12 miles up the Middle Fork, and you run into Moose Lake, which was formed by a glacier, and it's spring fed. And in fact, Archbishop Raymond Hunthausen has a cabin behind ours because a fellow from Butte, who was a mining engineer, John Potts, gave the cabin to the Catholic diocese when he died, and that's how Dutch Hunthausen acquired that cabin.
No, that's where you were married, isn't it?
We were married in a chapel. He still has the chapel they built when the priests used to go up there on retreats. Father Topel and Father Kirkin from Carroll. Father Kirkin taught German and Topel taught math. And then, of course, Father Hunthausen, before he became bishop, they got together and built this chapel. And when the Catholic Church acquired Legendary Lodge at the end of Salmon Lake, then the priests started going there for their retreats, and they didn't use Moose Lake as much. And finally, Dutch Hunthausen talked the diocese into giving it to him.
So the cabin and the chapel are the same thing?
No, no.
Two separate places.
That's funny too. I don't know. I'm getting into trivia, but I kid Dutch Hunthausen because they converted the chapel into bedrooms and took the altar and took it outside and turned it into a picnic table. But Dutch Hunthausen assured me that that doesn't void my marriage. We had to get permission from Raymond Hunthausen when he was bishop to be married in that chapel because it wasn't a consecrated chapel. And Father Spraykar from Philipsburg, we were in that diocese, performed the marriage ceremony there.
You were married in that diocese?
Married in that chapel in that diocese.
And so you were married in the Catholic chapel because of what?
Because Mary Kay is very Catholic.
So how did you and Mary Kay meet each other?
Mary Kay was working at the First National Bank.
In Helena?
In Helena. And my law partner, Mac Hughes, had a brother, Tom Hughes, who was an officer in the First National Bank. And he told Mary Kay, he didn't like the guys Mary Kay was dating, and he talked her into going out with me, and we had, that first date was wonderful. Excuse me. And we dated for 18 months and got married.
So how many kids did you have, you and Mary Kay?
We have an older son, Harry, who is 44. He works for AT&T in Denver, in Dallas. And we have a younger son, John, who's an architect in Salt Lake.
And then, so again, Father Spraykar married you
Yes.
at Moose Lake. And is there anything else about Moose Lake? I mean, most people, it's basically a Butte Anaconda community, is that right? Or
Well, it's changing now, but, you know, it started out, these were Eddie Borchard, who worked for the Anaconda Company, and Tom Taylor, who was running the savings and loan for the Murrays, before they were married, went up to Moose Lake. They wanted a fishing camp and a hunting camp. And they built cabins up there. And then when they married, of course, they had their families. Ed Borchard had a son and a daughter. The daughter still owns the cabin. And of course, the Taylors gave the cabin to my mother when they moved to Salt Lake and weren't using it anymore.
Now, the people from Butte that would go up there, they'd drive over from Butte through Anaconda?
Yeah.
Did you ever take that trip, go from Butte?
Oh, sure. We went back and forth to Butte a lot.
Do you remember some of the roadhouses along the way?
Well, wait a minute. Yeah. Oh, God, yes. What the heck is the one there at Georgetown? The Brown Derby. Sure, the Brown Derby there at Georgetown. And the leaky roof in Ramsey, wherever that was. I see that the Brown Derby has been redone. I think the leaky roof is gone. That was a great place to get hamburgers and beer.
Did you ever see one called Mammy Shack?
No.
Dance hall, a restaurant, and a bar?
Where was that?
Somewhere on the road to Anaconda.
Oh.
Did you, how did you get to Butte when you were going to Butte? Did you take a car or a train?
Well, when I was young, my dad's law firm did the work for the Great Northern, and the Great Northern had a passenger train that went to Butte several times a day for a while. And we had a pass on the railroad because of the law firm. And I'd get on the Great Northern had a great old passenger station down where the Federal Reserve Bank is now. It was torn down to build that bank. And I used to get on the train there and go over to Butte. It took about 3 or 4 hours to go to Butte. And then somebody in my family would pick me up. And I'd either stay with one set of aunts and uncles or the other, or one set of the grandparents or the other. And God, Butte was, I mean, it was, I don't know what the population was in 1930 when I was over there. I would have been 10 years old in 39. But I used to ride the streetcars. There were streetcars in Butte. And I used to go out to the Columbia Gardens, and I used to go places with my cousins. I used to have a lot of fun in Butte. And then as I got older, I mean, you were talking about Harp Cody. I can remember one time I was talking to Harp Cody, and I said,